Hey everyone, Chris Snott with Reprogrammed, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the abs. Everyone likes to have a nice pair of abs, and if you're one of my guys over 40, and if you're wondering, is it possible to get those abs again? Let me tell you the answer is yes. Now, you've heard it said that abs are made in the kitchen. That is only half true, because if you get rid of fat and you still have no muscle underneath, you're gonna have nothing to show for it. However, if you do crunches all day long and then you still have this nice big layer of fat on top, you're never gonna see it. So you have to have both. And in our program, we will show you how to diet correctly so that we can melt away that fat. And I'm gonna show you some things right now so you can start working on the nice six pack and so you get the muscles that you can actually show off. Okay, first, let's talk a little bit anatomy about the abs. Okay, what do the abs do? Obviously, they curl the spine, they rotate the spine. When people say the word core, I don't like to use that term. Why? Because you only think about the abs, but in reality, the core is anything that supports your spine and anything that your spine touches, which means if it supports my head, guess what? That's a part of your core because it's a part of your spine. If my arms are moving and my scapula is moving, that's a part of your core. My pelvis, anything that's attached down here is a part of my core. Because in real life, I have to move my arms, I have to move my legs, and they're ultimately responsible for moving me. And what is the me? Really, it's my torso to go from point A to point B through arm and through leg motion. So therefore, if I am pushing, let's say, from the ground through my leg, what is it pushing? It's pushing my hip, which is now moving my spine. But if my spine is a wobbly, wet noodle, I'm not going to have efficient motion, which means I have to have control and rigidity, and that is really what we mean by the core. So stop using the word core. It's not just this. It sounds stupid. It sounds like you're back from 1980s. What we're talking about today is the aesthetics and the functionality of the rectus abdominal muscles, the main muscles right in here, okay? That's what you care about when you take your shirt off at the beach. Now, if I just do a whole bunch of crunches, most people when they think of crunches, you're thinking of a top down, right? We have to curl and flex the spine. That's gonna get a lot more of the upper abs, but we're gonna show you better ways to do that. Where most people have deficiency in those last little bit down here. And that's because we have to really work at rocking the pelvis and curling the spine from the bottom up. That is where we get most of our back pain because, well, like in my runners, for example, when you run, you hit the ground, you extend the hip, which actually takes me into what's called an anterior pelvic tilt. But if I don't have hamstrings, if I don't have glutes, I'm not gonna curl the leg, I'm gonna pull from the hip flexor. And if my hips are back here and I start this motion, you can see how it's binding me up. That's why I get a lot of athletes with a lot of tight hips and a lot of tight backs. Now you get the same thing. If you're one of my executives and you're sitting in a desk all day, you're like this all the time, your hips are tight, your back is tight, and we try to get you open, but then we come into here, we have to control the pelvis with the glutes and with these low abs. So even in my fundamental rehab and my fundamental sports performance, we do a ton of lower abdominal work so that we can control the pelvis. If you've watched my squat tutorials or anything with my lower body, you have heard me say that anything with your leg starts by controlling your pelvis. Guess what? One of the primary things to control your pelvis? Those low abs. So this is where we're gonna start. We're first gonna start by learning how to bring the pelvis up, not just the knee. If I'm bringing the knee, guess what? This is hip flexors. So if you're on one of those stands at the gym and your elbows are right here and you're doing this exercise, you're getting an isometric at the abs, but you're really primarily using hip flexors and you're wondering why you're not getting abs and you're wondering why your back is tightening up. That is why. So right now, I'm gonna give you some better exercises to both make your back feel better, protect you, control the pelvis, and start with some good lower abdominals. All right, so one of the first things that you can do at any gym or at home is to work on raising the legs from the lower abs. However, understand that I'm not pulling the knee, I'm wanting to work on rocking the pelvis. So if I am sitting here on the edge of a bench and I start to come back to the point where I can balance, This is my start point. Now, this would be an isometric. So that's like the equivalent of doing like a plank. Now, I need motion. So if I'm just pulling a knee, that's hip flexor. But what I really want is as I come up, once I get to about 90 degrees, I'm actually going to crunch. I am pulling the pelvis up from here. The only thing I'm doing here is bringing my chest towards my knees, but that's a counterbalance. So as my legs go straight, I lean back. Because if I don't lean back, there's my weight. So I find my balance point, I stretch, and I crunch like an accordion. If I do this from the side, you'll see, again, I'm not just pulling here. I have to bring this right here. This is your focus. Bring your lower belly button up towards your chest. Here's our exercise number 1 to demonstrate low abs as we come here to here. Now, with the crunch, am I getting some upper abs too? Yes, that's why this makes a great lower ab and more total ab exercise. It's okay to hold on at first. Get to the point where you can let go and control that range of motion. That's going to be exercise number 1. Okay, exercise number 2 is just a variation of that. Once you get good at that accordion motion where you're really pulling from the lower abs, we can take our same bench and now I can lift up and over, side to side. So again, I go out and down, lift crunch, out and down, lift crunch. So now we're getting a little bit of oblique in with the same exercise. That's going to be exercise number 2. All right, so next I'm going to show you some other variations that help you to target, again, those lower abdominals, those really hard to get lower abdominals. Now, if we have one of these rollers, very common that you find at gyms nowadays. If we don't have one of these, we can use sliders. If you're at home and you want the cheap man's version, go to Home Depot and get those furniture movers that you put underneath and it allows your furniture to slide. Same thing. You can put those underneath your toes and they work the exact same way. If you take the principle, you can apply it no matter where you're at. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start off on my toes, on my hands in a plank position. Now, first off, notice I'm not sagging my hips. I'm gonna keep my hips up because I'm gonna go from here. And again, I already start that tuck position, but I'm gonna hold it isometrically, which is part of your posture. So again, my guys over 40, we wanna look good and we wanna feel good and we still wanna perform. So everything you do should not be just for physique. Make sure that we're multifaceted. If you work towards human design, work towards posture, work towards working on the ways that the muscles get rebalanced, you're gonna feel better, you're gonna perform better, and you're gonna look good at the same time. So in our plank position, I'm going to tuck my pelvis here. Now, watch here. Most people just do this, and they're gonna roll by pulling their knees. Again, that's the same as me using my hip flexors. So I don't care as much about the knees coming under. I want you to watch the pelvis. That's the takeaway. So as I lift and bring my knees, watch this. There's my crunch right here. So I could actually isolate just this. We could call this like a bird dog plank. So I'm crunching, bringing my pelvis. If you're feeling your hip flexors, we're not doing it right. We have to feel that low ab here. Now, we can lengthen, and the longer my legs go, the more isometric resistance I get through the entire torso. So again, extra work. As long as I'm not transferring to my hip flexors, or even worse, my low back, because I look like a banana. So keep the pelvis tucked, even when we're going straight. So again, if I'm in my tuck position, there's my neutral position. So again, there's number 1, but now as I go out, I'm not losing it there. Hips up, tuck the pelvis. See, I can tuck the pelvis without bending my knees. So I'm gonna tuck my pelvis, knees, crunch, out, boom, but no here. Stop here. Yes, 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 no. Keep it right here. Bam, bam. Okay, that's our level 1 pike in the roller position. Next, we're gonna go into the same exercise, but we're gonna do a straight leg pike, which is a little bit more challenging. So I start in my same plank, tuck the pelvis. Now I'm gonna go butt up in the air, straight legs. Come back out. Again, I stop right here, never banana. Here, pike, down, pike, and down. Anytime that we pike forces us to go from that the anterior pelvic now to a posterior, because again, I'm here as I pike, but we're under tension because of the angle. Again, I can be on a roller, I can be on any kind of slider. I'm gonna show you, I can also do this in the TRX. We'll show you that next. All right, a more advanced option in our Pike series here is going to be with the Pilates chair. Again, you don't have to have this apparatus. We can do this on a Pilates Cadillac. Again, it's really the same thing as any of our rollers. I just wanted to show you a slight variation just in case you happen to be in Pilates. So you can come into here. If I step on this, bring my fingers forward, again, I'm gonna straighten my legs, and then as I crunch, there's my crunch right there. See the anterior, posterior, crunch, pike. Here's my pike position. Notice I'm not bending my knees, okay? And the further I keep my shoulders back without falling, the harder this exercise gets. Again, this is partly gymnastics, partly Pilates. Again, who created it? Neither one created it. This is human movement here. We're just using different things or calling it by different names, but doing the same thing that humans have been doing for forever. So get in your pike position, fingers forward, shoulders over the hands, anterior, go to posterior pelvic tilt, legs straight. There's my crunch right here. I'm gonna control the descent, touch and go. So here's a variation where my hands are fixed and my legs are moving. But again, I can do the same thing on a roller. We've shown you in the TRX. So these are all variations. All you have to do is get that pelvis going from that anterior to the posterior with an additional crunch. And this is how we're going to engage those low abs. And if you really are sitting around all day, if you're having back pain, this is going to be fundamental on how you take care of this. All right, as we continue our Pike series, we are going to also be able to use a TRX or suspension trainer that is common on most gyms. So very simply, I'm just gonna take my straps, I'm gonna drop my toes in. As I drop my toes in, now I've got my, again, plank position. Remember, no banana. Tuck the pelvis. So again, it's not just butt up, tuck the pelvis. There's the difference right there. Now my lower abs are engaged. Now I can pike right here. So there's my TRX Pike. Again, you see people doing this, that's just hip flexor. Now, if I tuck my pelvis, bring my knees in and do my last part, there, that is the abs, okay? Not this. If I'm doing this, you're just gonna get tired hips. So, pike here, hips up, tuck, either pike or knees and then crunch, crunch, crunch. There's my suspension trainer abs. Okay, now that we've done our whole Pike series and working the lower abs, maybe you don't have all that. Maybe you just got a floor. Maybe you're fortunate that you got a med ball, foam roller. I'm gonna talk now about how to get the abs when you're on the floor, as well as how we can maximize our basic crunch positions. So first, if I am lying back on the ground, okay, again, when my low back comes off the ground, what is that? That's my anterior pelvic tilt. So first thing we're always gonna do is make my low back come flat to the floor. As my low back comes flat to my floor with my abs, what am I doing? I'm now going into my posterior pelvic tilt. So any kind of crunch from here is going to at least be isometric from the low abs, and then now I'm moving the upper abs. So that really is the anatomy of the basic crunch. Now, I can make that a greater range of motion if I take my foam roller, and this would be the same thing for a Swiss ball too, because the Swiss ball allows me to roll over the ball with a little extra instability. And again, if I have more unstable environment, I have to work more stability, which means I can't work as much intensity, but they're both good and they're both good to train. Why? Because in the real world, I'm in an unstable environment. So we want to have the proprioception. However, if I'm working for muscle mass so I can have more abs to show off, I want to be able to increase intensity. So these are always trade-off. Again, it's not about right or wrong, good or bad. It's about using the right tool for the right task. But if I take my foam roller, and again, I can put it in different positions. So as I roll back, the further I go back, here I am. So you got to find your balance point, but notice when I lay over, that's going to be a big anterior pelvic tilt. So now I can really work the low abs here. As I now crunch, notice I'm not just holding the low abs. Okay, that would be the isometric. And now I have got a bigger range of motion for my crunch, but I can open, lift, crunch, come down, open, lift, crunch. So it's almost like a 4 count. So I go 1, lower pelvis, 2, crunch. Now it's a full crunch. 3, upper comes down, 4, lower comes down. Lower, upper, upper, lower, lower, upper, upper, and lower. That is actually a full crunch of the full lower and upper spine, which is going to be crucial because remember, in all of our training, the more we can take a muscle in its lengthened position and then full range. So again, a whole nother series that we talked about, if you are trying to get hypertrophy and or strength, muscles that are trained in full range of motion or in their lengthened range of motion is always going to yield better hypertrophy results with all their variables staying the same than if you just worked the shortened. Again, if I'm just working my biceps here, I'm gonna get a pump, but when I go in the full range of motion, or even if I went in the partial and down here, our science shows us that that is where we're gonna get the greatest amount of hypertrophy gains. So in the same way, if I'm just crunching all the time, it's like me working my biceps right here. We want to open up all the way, and that is what is a benefit of the foam roller. It really allows me to open and close fully. Now, if you are so weak that you literally couldn't do that, we can always use a band. Hang a band from a suspension, a cable unit, or whatever, and you can use a light band to even assist you with the crunches. That would be a way to do a digression. However, the full range of motion is what we're looking for when we're doing the foam roller. Now, if I have a med ball, I can use a med ball in the same way as the foam roller. I can still put it behind my back. I can stretch. Again, there's my full range of motion. Lower pelvis, upper torso, down, and then drop the pelvis. Lower abs, upper abs, down, release. Again, as you get good at that, you can make it more fluid and less robotical. But at first, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I want you to learn how to get the control of those lower abs. Now, one thing I haven't talked about yet is head position. Head position is just as important because we don't want to be cranking on the neck. So I've been turning to the camera, but if I'm doing this by myself, I am always going to keep a neutral head position. So as my upper and thoracic spine moves, my head actually stays in the same position. I'm not doing this or this, all sorts of weird stuff. So now if you watch me from here, even though I'm crunching, again, if I had a ball right underneath my chin, notice that position stays the same the entire time. I'm not pulling on my head and I'm not doing this, creating the double chin. Keep the chin here. I'm also not doing this. Neutral. So that's not neutral. That's neutral. That's not neutral. This is neutral. Always ball right here. As the spine moves, my head stays in the same position. That will keep you from jacking up your neck. Okay, moving from my crunch series, If we still have our med ball, now we can get some additional oblique work. So very simply, just like our very first exercise on the bench, where we lean back and found our balance point, we can always start with the feet on the ground, lean back, and again, I'm just gonna touch, touch. Notice the head rotates with the spine, okay? I'm not doing one of these. Let the head rotate, rotate, rotate. Just like you've heard maybe in gymnastics, where the head goes, the body follows. So if I am keeping my head here, which is something that you see a lot of people do, I'm actually not able to open up my spine as much. What are we trying to do with these exercises? I want to rotate and move the spine so those muscles can go into lengthened position. So where the head goes, the body will follow. Let my head go and look at my range of motion. If I keep my head there, I get tight here. If I turn, oh, that's the range of motion. I just open, turn, turn, turn. More advanced, lean back more, pick the feet up on the ground, boom, boom, boom. Try not to cross the legs. That's another common mistake. Try to keep everything as symmetrical as possible. I'm gonna keep right angles here. I'm gonna straighten the legs based on the balance point. I've got long legs and a short torso, so therefore I have to lean back more. If you have a longer torso and shorter legs, you might not have to lean back as much. You might have to straighten your legs more. That's okay. The key is be symmetrical as much. Don't be flailing around as you do this. That's a whole other series of exercises where you get into some chaos like our wrestlers and other athletes. But build your foundation first before you get crazy with your motion. Learn to control your body, then you can use your body to be faster, more explosive, all these other attributes. Quick note to my high school kids, my younger athletes. Right now, everyone wants to do the fun, cool stuff, so they're doing all the speed and agility and all that. Here's a big problem. A lot of these kids have not gone through fundamental training, therefore they can't even control their body. They can't even hold a single 1-minute iso lunge position without falling over. And yet, they are trying to run faster, move their feet faster, do all these things. And so they're working on the skill side of movement, but they don't have the control. It's like putting a kid in a Ferrari and they're pounding on the gas, but they don't even know how to use the brakes yet. So it's a dangerous recipe for later for injury, and it's gonna halt their actual ability to move into their potential because they don't have the foundations. So quick side note on that, but all of this is still the same. Before we get into one arm kettlebell, strap, this, that, and the other, if you can't even control your body simply, don't start doing all this other random, all sorts of stuff, okay? Keep it simple, build the basics. Your body will thank you for it, and your results will also get there much faster. Okay. All right, one of my finishers that I like to do with my athletes when we just have a floor or maybe a med ball is an exercise I call skywalkers. What we're gonna do is simply lie back, legs straight up in the air. This will also work a little bit of hamstring flexibility. I like to point the toes. Now, what I'm gonna do is place my hands directly on my shins, and I'm gonna crunch, 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 touch my ankles, and back down, very simply. I'm trying not to do a lot of this here. I'm just crunching, reaching. As you get stronger, you'll get higher. Again, more flexible, the straighter here. And again, the advanced version would be now med ball, touch the toes. Touch the toes, touch the toes, touch the toes. That's gonna be your extreme crunch / pike position from the floor. Okay, the finisher to the whole pike series isn't technically my finisher, it's really my starting point. However, it's one of the more challenging exercises, but it's one of my main litmus tests for all of my athletes. It doesn't matter what level. I have had the top athletes in the world and they still struggle with this exercise because they've never trained it. And especially my sprinters and my high athletes like Odell Beckham, they're so powerful at the hip that they get so much knee drive that their low abs are still lacking to control their pelvis, which is why they end up getting hip and groin issues and low back issues. So my standard is what we call the hanging abs. Now, simply, this is like a hanging leg raise, but I'm gonna show you first what most people do and do it incorrectly, and I'm gonna show you how to fix it. First, as we hang, most people will just do this. This is the most common. And again, from our whole series, what you've learned is that this is just hip flexors. I'm having to hold my pelvis. So yeah, there's some isometric work going on, but we're not actually getting motion of the pelvis. Just like if I held something with my bicep, is it going to get stronger? Maybe a little bit in this range of motion. And again, science shows us that an isometric contraction, we're going to get stronger plus or minus 5 degrees range of motion from that isometric. However, if I really want to get strong and we're looking for hypertrophy, we have to get range of motion at the pelvis. So I don't care as much from here to here. What I care about is here to here. Now, notice I'm not leaning back, okay? I am trying to rock my pelvis. So I go from here to here, and that's the key. So again, I'm hanging, not here, there, boom, boom, right here. That is the range of motion I'm looking for. Now, as you get good in that, then I can control and open it up all the way. Straight leg, curl, straight leg, curl, straight leg, curl. And then the last one is toes to the bar. Straight leg, toes to the bar, coming down, toes to the bar, which obviously is a lot more advanced. Now, you're probably looking at this going, Chris, I can barely hang. Yes, grip strength, shoulders, they can become a limiting factor in the hanging leg raise, which is why I prefer using what we call ab wings, which are basically the straps that hang and you put your arms through, and that way you can rest. There's a lot of companies. Spuddy makes a great one. Now you can go to Amazon. If you just type in hanging leg raises or ab wings, okay, you'll see what I'm talking about. Those you can strap on to a pull-up bar, take them to your gym, whatever. They're a lot more comfortable, and you can bang out more volume that way. So I wanted you to understand the concept first, and then know how we can do that. But why this is also important, you saw me say it at the beginning, a lot of times at the gym, you're in that thing where the pads are on the arms and we're just doing this. That's why I don't like that, because it's locked out your back and you really can't get that very well. So the hanging abs is the final piece of resistance. We have to get good at bringing the pelvis up. Now, at the very beginning, if you're in your ab wings, and you can't even bring your knees to your elbows, that's where you have to start. You're going to have a partner hold your feet. You can use bands. Imagine if I were here, now I can bring my knees to my elbows. This is where we want to be. If I can't even hold that for 30 seconds, I'm probably not ready to start doing repetitions. So again, just so you can see, if I'm hanging, my arms are in this position, not hanging, and I want you to see the range of motion every single time. So once again, I'm here. If I were hanging, my arms would be here, knees to elbows. I'm gonna stop right here, back up, touch, touch, touch. There's my straight one. There's my leg raise. Yes, it's a lot more advanced, a lot more challenging, but that's where you're gonna get the greatest ab development. So put all this in combination, you've got abs for years of training. Next, I'm going to talk about your set and rep schemes. Now, to finish off our abs series, if we have a cable machine, we can start doing cable resisted abs. So we're going to do, the simplest thing is your tricep rope. Now, some nice gyms actually have ab straps that you can use, but this works just fine. So come into your cable machine, grab it, bring it over your head, and then we're going to drop down to the knees here. Now from here, again, I can do a top-down crunch, which again, if my pelvis is, I'll do it from the side here, if my pelvis is tucked under, now I crunch just like earlier. What I don't want to do is this. So again, if I'm just pulling from this direction with my butt out, you can see that's hip flexor. Again, for our abs, what we want to do, we want to crunch the spine here. So again, I'm keeping my pelvis forward. Now we can do the 4 count too. I can open, close, and down. The thing in this position is there's not really a lot of resistance here. It just looks like a bad movie. Okay, so we're gonna keep bringing the pelvis in here to set the foundation for the crunch right here. Now I can crunch and then add some of this because my hip is forward. If my hip's going back, Again, that's the hip flexor. But with my pelvis forward, now I can crunch and I can get that full range of motion and open up here at the abs. Now, why is this so important? This is important because we have to increase intensity. If you've been doing crunches your whole life, you can probably do like 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 crunches, whatever. It's not enough stimulus to actually create hypertrophy. It'd be like me, if I start off and I couldn't even do a push-up, I'm gonna get some muscle growth by going from no push-ups to being able to do 100 push-ups. However, once you can do like a set of 100 push-ups, then your body's like been there, done that. It's the same reason why you don't get massive calves from walking around all day, because your body is used to that stimulus. So if you want bigger calves, what do you gotta do? You gotta go to the gym, you gotta get under a machine where you can put more body weight on, and now you can be in rep ranges more in that anywhere from 5 to 15 rep range so that you can overload the muscle. If you're doing exercises for 20 plus reps, it's not enough stimulus. Your abs, the old school train was you train your abs and your calves differently. And the answer is actually no. It doesn't matter fast twitch, slow twitch. There's slight variations, but really more in performance side. But when it comes to hypertrophy, it's really about overloading the muscle and taking it to its point of failure. So we have to be smart. If I fail all the time, then we have to worry about recovery. However, if you are doing even 50 crunches and we're still not going to failure, or even if you're taking something like that to exhaustion to failure, again, that's like walking all day long and having tired legs, but you're not gonna get the size and the definition you're looking for. So therefore, that's why we do the harder exercises like the hanging abs, why we use med balls, why we use the cable machine, because at some point, you cannot just keep adding volume, you have to overload the intensity. So when you start choosing exercises, I want you to get to the point for each exercise that your actual, like probably 1 to 2 primary working sets, you're gonna take the muscle close to failure, if not to failure, with that exercise, but we need to be in a rep range of probably no more than 20 reps, and ideally more like in the 8 to 15 rep range. 8 to 10 is even more ideal, because if I can take an exercise like that and I can go through a full range of motion, get the full length of the muscle, and I can take the muscle to failure within that rep range, now we actually have stimulus that's going to create more growth and more change. And just like any other exercise, if you want your chest to be bigger, you put more weight on the bar in your bench press. So how do you know you're improving? Well, guess what? If I recover and next week I get stronger, I can put even more weight on the bar. Same thing with the cable unit. If I can put more weight on and still get to that point of failure with good form, and that's the caveat, then I'm gonna have enough stimulus. So if you are wondering why your abs aren't changing and you're dieted down so your body fat's pretty low, so you can see your abs, but they just don't look good, you wanna look like the back of a turtle, like ripped kind of abs, you got to make the muscle physically bigger. Now, that's for more of the guys. Now, women too, you don't have to be afraid of this because you don't have the genetics to get super huge. At the same time, notice we don't do a ton of oblique work. So I'm not doing like the strongman stuff in this video or some of the things that might be good if you want to deadlift a whole bunch of weight. But again, a lot of guys who can squat and deadlift a ton of weight, they also have really big, thick guts because they're protecting their spine. Again, your body will adapt to its demands. If you want to just deadlift a whole bunch of weight, you better have a lot of stuff going on to protect your spine. But if you want to have a nice tapered look, when you take your shirt off at the beach, where you have a nice broad shoulder and tapered abs, you don't want to have a lot of extra here. I don't want to pack on muscle this way. I want this to be narrow, but I want this to be wide. So it gives you the illusion. So that's why we want enough muscle mass to show, but then we want to diet down. If you don't have enough muscle, don't be afraid of putting on some abs, but let's be smart about it. And again, my females, if you want to have that nice bikini body, we still have to work the abs, but we're going to make sure that we keep the muscles at length. That's why a lot of my ladies like Pilates, my ballet courses, some of those things that we do in the gymnastics types of abs, because it's beautiful that way. It's very aesthetic. So again, we can all get there. It just has to use the right tool at the right time with the right programming. But if you're watching this, I guarantee you everyone that's watching this can benefit from taking your abs to a higher level of intensity, more towards failure in these types of exercises. I hope you enjoyed it.